Starting the session. Okay, so I wanted to welcome everyone. I'm Mia Harnos. I am the new Director of Energy here at NCAP. I'm new to the role, but I've probably served at Wayne Metro in the city of Detroit for 20 years. I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve and supporting all the important work that you do in your states and communities. So thank you. Thank the NCAP leadership and the board. So the topic of the hour today is the solar value proposition and the role that renewable energy could play in lowering operating costs for your organization. This is a potential business decision for your organization to make because it's investments into sustainability, you're decreasing your carbon footprint, things like demonstrating commitment to the well-being of the people in your community and the environment. But solar is still relatively new to the space. And so for many of us, including myself, who are not solar gurus, before we get to the pitch or the sell on this opportunity, we're going to hear from Kendra Baldwin, who is our renewables and clean energy expert. She's going to set the stage for us here on solar basics, and then we'll hand it over to Laura for all of the meat of the program. But first, before we do that, we are going to, next slide, recite our promise of community action. This promise is really our North Star. We all know this. In challenging times, it keeps our hearts and minds focused on the people who need us most. Reading and reciting this, for me, it's like rocket fuel. It feels like a booster shot and really a source from which to draw strength. So now more than ever, leaning into the spirit of hope for which we as a network helpers and warriors offer through our service in every state and territory across America. Community action changes people's lives. We embody the spirit of hope. We improve communities and make America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. Next. We also want to include our land acknowledgement. Where I am today, where I'm being held, my traditional land is the Wyandotte people. So I pay my respect to the elders, both past and present, who have stewarded this land through generations. The Wyandotte people are very still present in our community here. They were helpers. They cared for newcomers and settlers. They shared resources and food, furs, how to trap. They helped newcomers to navigate waterways, fish, hunt. So, in many landmarks, artwork, our community spaces, the native folks are still really very interwoven into our daily lives here in Wyandotte. So if you go to this link and you enter your address, you can too find out who the natives are, the native people from your community. And I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to the fierce Kendra Baldwin. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Like Mia said, I'm Kendra Baldwin. I'm the Senior Associate Weatherization and Climate Engagement here at NCAP. So I am involved in everything climate related, renewables, clean energy, and also, of course, the weatherization that grounds us in this space in community action. So to kick us off, so the Inflation Reduction Act, it has been a huge topic of conversation since it was first announced. And I think now especially, it's important to jump on the opportunities we have while we have them, because this is a huge amount of money and a huge opportunity that we have right now, and we do still have. So that's kind of our guiding force on this, to not give up just because there's been a wrench thrown in our plans. The money is still there. The opportunity is still there. We just got to jump on it. So how do we jump on it? So what we wanted to do was first break down kind of the basics of solar, just to kind of differentiate the different ways that you can do solar. So there's several different types of power systems, solar power systems. To start off kind of broadly, so you have the grid, the energy grid. That's what the the power companies, when they generate power, they send it out to homes. More than likely, that's where you get your power from. So if you have a solar system that is grid tied, then that means the panels are generating energy and then sending that energy into the grid, and you're also using it for your property. And grid tie is what allows net metering. And you've probably heard that phrase before as well. Net metering is how, if you generate more electricity than you use on your property, then you will get a credit for that energy. And this system, net metering specifically, is going to provide you with the highest savings out of all of your options. And then you have off-grid solar systems. So off-grid is really, really beneficial to those who don't have access to the traditional energy grid. You don't have to be connected to any power lines. It's just your system, your property. But you do need to have a storage bank for an off-grid system to be feasible. And this, this just is a huge opportunity to be able to bring power to remote locations. And then you have backup power, which is basically a hybrid system of the two. It still connects to the grid, and you still are able to use your power, but you also have a battery included. So in case of, say, a blackout, or then you have that battery to be able to keep your system up and running. So energy metering. So I mentioned net metering, which begs the question, what is a meter? So the meter is what measures the energy that comes from the grid to your system. It's how they count how much power you're using, so that when you get your energy bill, they're not just giving you a random number. It's this is how much you use times how much it costs. That's your bill. So how your system interacts with the meter is another factor in how things work. So first, there's front of the meter, and that means that the energy is passing through the meter, it's being tracked to provide energy off-site from where it's being generated. So that's your traditional, it's generated at a power plant, goes through the meter, comes to you. You can also have that from a traditional solar system, but that's just an example. It goes from the grid through the meter. And then behind the meter, that means that where the energy is produced is where it's being used. Since it's not interacting with the grid, then it doesn't have to pass the meter. So then there's community solar. So community solar is when the energy is consumed locally, not necessarily on site, but based like in your community. So if there's a large farm that's being used as a solar farm, they're generating the electricity, and then 5 miles down the road, you are subscribed to that system. You're benefiting from the electricity that they're generating, and you get a credit on your bill. It doesn't necessarily mean that the exact energy that is coming from this community solar system is coming to you, but you are getting the benefit of that energy that's being generated. Doesn't really make a difference as far as how you are receiving the energy. It's the same, it's just you are part of the process, if that makes sense. So how do you pay for this? Because a lot of electronics means a lot of money. So there are several different payment and ownership options. So first, the most straightforward is purchasing your own system. This usually results in the highest savings, but since you're paying for everything out of pocket, it's also very expensive. But you own your own equipment, everything is yours, but that also means you're responsible for maintenance, which means you either have to know what you're doing or pay somebody else who does in order to maintain your system. So then there's also a lease system. It's a fixed payment each month. Somebody else owns your equipment, and that means that they are responsible for maintenance. All of the rebates and tax incentives that come through the federal regulations that have been happening, it goes to the owner. But this is usually reflected in that fixed payment that you are paying because it is still cheaper than if you were using your traditional energy source. And then there's a purchase power agreement, or PPA. And that's very similar to the lease system, but you pay based on how much energy you use, not based on a fixed payment. And some states do not allow PPAs, so it's important to know what the rules are in your states, because that's another thing with solar. It can get very in the weeds, not even just in your state, in your county. There are different regulations. So it's just important to know what is allowed and what isn't. Just because certain things are allowed doesn't mean everything is allowed, and vice versa. So it's just important to know the distinctions and in order to decide which process is better for you. So this slide, we have some examples of different systems of solar. So you have your traditional, the rooftop, awnings, shade canopies for cars, but then also there are windows, fences, and facades. Even though these other options are very expensive now, they're still in the process of production and becoming more accessible. So these options are something to really think about for the future. If, say, you're in a densely populated area, you don't have a lot of land, you don't have a lot of rooftop space. Or let's like if you're in a high rise, for instance, then windows would be a great option. But that's more of a looking towards the future option, because like I said, that's not financially the best way to go at the moment, but it is all very much in the works. And with that, introducing our new partnership, eCAP, which is a partnership between National Community Action Partnership, CAP Solar, and the Kresge Foundation. And we will now play this video. And I should have tested the sound before. Sorry, I have.
Kendra, I think if you go to share, oh, you got it. Share and then, yep, okay, cool.
Let's see, let me make sure it's sound. Nope, okay. Should be quick.
Installing a solar microgrid. Whether a building community facilities of all kinds can benefit from installing a solar microgrid. Whether a building serves children at a childcare center, families at a food bank, clients at community action agencies, or congregants at a church, all nonprofit facilities play an important role in community life. Microgrids help keep doors open during planned and disaster-caused outages, so community members can still access childcare, food, or other crucial services. Microgrids also have financial benefits. Switching to solar leads to savings by reducing the amount of electricity an organization has to buy from the grid. Nonprofits can fix and continue to reduce electricity costs over 30 years, making planning and budgeting easier. And with a battery storing the generated energy, comes the opportunity to sell unused electricity back to the grid. You can draw on it when energy is expensive and count on it when a power crisis hits. There are benefits for individuals too. The people nonprofits serve are often those most negatively impacted by climate change-caused disasters and bad environmental policies. They should not be excluded from the benefits of resilient, clean microgrids. And surveys show workers feel better about working in a green building. They enjoy the benefits like energy security, convenient EV charging stations, and carport solar. Microgrids provide community benefits during major disasters and climate-related events. Resiliency centers maintain power for community members to charge devices, keep medicines safe, and to provide cooling during heat waves. Microgrids also bring resilient jobs and job training to your community. And of course, there are global benefits. Nonprofits can and should be a model of how we can do better. Microgrid-powered community facilities could offset millions of tons of CO2 emissions annually, which equates to real change in global greenhouse gas emissions. Get your building assessed today. Community action agencies can find help from eCAP, a new partnership of CAP Solar, and the National Community Action Partnership. Scan the QR code or click the link below to register now for a follow-up call. Together, we can bring the green energy future to all communities.
All right, and with that, I will pass things over to Laura.
Thank you, Kendra. Thank you, Mia. Thank you to everyone who's here. I really appreciate your time today. So first of all, my name is Laura Miranda Brown, and I am here representing CAP Solar. I have been a part of this organization for about 6 months now, and so I'm new to community action, and I find it really a fascinating place. So you've seen our video, you've got a little sense of what we're doing, and as Kendra said, we are a partnership between NCAP, CAP Solar, and the Kresge Foundation, really for the purposes of helping community action take advantage of, the Biden administration's funding opportunities. And I specify that they are, Biden administration successes because the IRA really is the backbone of this program and the ability to put this together. And so while we know things are likely to change come January, we're not really sure how or when. And so, when we came up with this idea and talked about it at first, we were working under one set of rules and what we knew. And now we're all across the board waiting to see what happens. And so I want to preface all of this by saying what we are telling you today is accurate and true for right now and for through the end of this administration. And as things change, we will do our best to communicate clearly to everyone and to all our partners where things stand, what changes have taken place, how that might affect a project that is maybe under consideration or in steps of development. We really are going to push as hard as we can to ensure that community action is able to take advantage of what exists right now. And that's really all I can say about that. But I want to start out by saying nobody knows really what's going to happen. We all have ideas, we all have theories, and we are planning accordingly to sort of game out what strategies might look like in the future, but we will continue to keep everybody updated. Which leads me to my next point, in that eCAP and CAP Solar, this program was created to be as flexible as possible. We know that each CAP represents an individual community and place, and you all have very, very different needs. I met so many people in August, and each community really does have its own specific style, its own needs, and its own sort of flavor and sense of place. And we were built out and we have optimized our system to recognize those individual needs and to ensure that we are able to remove any of the work that would go into this process that might burden you and your staff and your community. Take that on, right? We don't want this process to be one that makes things harder for you all, right? So as we go along, you'll see what I mean. But we really are here to help you and get you the lowest possible energy costs, get you renewable clean energy that will be a resilience to you and your community in times of need and disaster, and make this process as simple and transparent for you as is possible. Next slide, please. Who are we? You definitely know who NCAP is. You know that CAP Solar is a nonprofit solar developer that was conceived of specifically to help nonprofit organizations take advantage of clean energy systems. Our goal is to make each project make sense for you. And we have experience from everything from project finance on these projects to the execution and build to the maintenance implementation phase, right? So we can do from start to finish and be there with you each step of the way, and problem solve, right? No construction project ever undertaken has gone perfectly, right? Never. Even my home renovation of my bathroom was way more complicated than I anticipated. So we are here for each and every step. And you know, our portfolio is fairly large thus far, and we have saved CAPs, nonprofits, and religious organizations who've partnered with us over the last 11 years a considerable amount of money in their operating costs. And the Kresge Foundation is a national private foundation. They are, you can see here, quite large, and they really have a focus on low-income communities and ensuring that, you know, places and people who have been disproportionately impacted by inequities are receiving access and are getting a seat at the table. So I'm really grateful that they have found us and seen the value in the CAP network, to ensuring that their mission and their, you know, financial support ends up where they really, really want it to end up. Next slide. So what are we here for? How did we get here? As Kendra said, the Inflation Reduction Act is a landmark piece of legislation that pulled out all the stops on getting the economy boosted, centering green energy, and a major tentpole of that is something called the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. It's a $27 billion program that sits under EPA. And EPA is maybe not a branch of the government or department of the government that we here in community action work with all the time. And so they are a little new to some of us, and they're frankly a little new to this process in general. They're not normally in the loan making business. And so they have done an extraordinary job rolling out an incredibly complex and incredibly wide ranging program as quickly as they can. And it still has been slower than anyone would have wanted, right? So they've made this massive shift, and they've centered low-income communities. And this entire greenhouse gas reduction fund is developed and planned and specified for low-income communities. And they've done it through 3 buckets of money. As you can see here, there's the National Clean Investment Fund competition, which is a $14 billion loan fund. There's the Clean Communities Accelerator competition, which is another clean loan fund. And then there's a Solar for All grants, which I believe everybody is familiar with because they've gone to, I believe, every single state in the nation. And each state applied for those funds to do different things. Illinois applied for a very particular way. New Jersey, where I am, applied to create a larger green bank for the state. Everybody had a different idea. So there are lots of different ways to take bites at this apple. And the bites that we're focused on through the eCAP program is the $7 billion piece that comes under the NCIF loan fund. And we are in a position where, as a nonprofit developer and as a part of the Community Action Network, we've been brought in to conversations with the Treasury Department. We've been brought into conversations with people at EPA. We've been brought into conversations with the Fed, and that has allowed us the opportunity to sort of sing the praises of this network and educate people who are not familiar with community action on the wide-ranging network that we represent and the number of people we touch and interact with on a daily basis. And it has been, you know, as I said, I'm new to this world. And so it's been fascinating to me to learn about it. It's also been very fascinating to see how many other people don't know about this network, but upon learning about it, immediately understand the value proposition of leveraging our collective assets, buildings, our land, our parking lots, to the benefit of our communities. They get it instantly. And as a result, we are in conversations, as I said, with an awardee that got $7 billion, and they're well aware of us, and they are very anxious and excited to see how much we can put together. Peter, thank you for that question. Does the project have to be a Justice 40 to be eligible? No, there are different sort of segments and different levers you can pull within this to make a project work. And we can figure out how to make any project work, really. So long as, you own your property. Most importantly is owning the property. That will make it much, much easier to do. Next slide, please. So how does this help you? This will allow us to do roof-mounted solar arrays, car parking canopies, land-based battery systems, EV chargers. We can do these projects without necessarily having to leverage the incredibly complex and expensive tax equity partnership flip construct that has existed in this space for decades at this point. That is a true statement today. I am not sure that will be a true statement in 18 months from now, but today that remains true. The other thing that it means is that we are focused on reducing your organization's power bills by a measurable amount and locking that savings in for a 15 to 20-year period of time for you. And with all of the uncertainty going around and really not knowing how our budgets are going to be effective, we've got to really all be aware that any place we can cut operating costs for ourselves will be a net benefit to our community, right? So the second part of that, in addition to reducing costs, is another tentpole issue for us, which is to work within your local community, right? We don't just want to come in and bring in a giant national contractor and just swoop in, plop this down on your roof and walk away. We want to see more and more and more benefit in your community. We want to work with local contractors, local electricians, local engineers to install and maintain that system for you for 20 years. That's jobs and that's incomes in your community. And it's a visible way that you all can make a statement to your community that you are here and you are greening your community, and you are also fighting to ensure that they have jobs and clean energy together. Kendra actually made a point earlier that I thought was really salient, and that each town, county, state, location, it can be very complicated to understand the rules and regulations that are governing your building. And so we are tasked with not only figuring that out, but ensuring that we have partners locally who know that ecosystem, right? It really is important to work with partners on the ground who live it, breathe it, work it every single day to make sure we don't forget to check one box and then we can't turn your system on for 6 months and you're sitting there with stuff on your roof that you can't use. So yes, local jobs, local partnerships, and reducing your energy costs are key. Next slide. How do we do this, right? How do we go about getting access to the $7 billion? Because this is not going to be like going to our local bank or our local CDFI and going one by one and taking out a loan one by one. That would be the most expensive way of doing this. Our goal is to create a national community action centered portfolio by leveraging our size, our network, and where we are. We can leverage the benefit of, economies of scale, right? I shop at Costco. I get my gas at Costco. Why? Because it's cheaper, because there are so many partners. They can buy things, they can bulk buy things. I can bulk buy things cheaper. Same idea. You could go out and put 50 panels on your roof and it's going to be cost X. But if we go out for the entire state of Michigan and buy 50,000 panels, that price is going to be Y, not X. It's going to save us money. And what does that mean for you? That further lowers your cost, right? The cost of materials are lower, then the cost of your energy gets to be lowered. Once we have sort of a mass of projects, we get to present that back to our partners, our $7 billion awardee that's waiting for the list from us. They will then work with us to figure out how we can access that capital at the lowest possible rates to, again, keep all costs low, which ensures the lowest possible energy costs for you. I keep hammering it because that really is our driving, guiding principle. Lowering your costs so that you can use that money for other community benefits. There's no other way to put it than that. And lastly, we will stay involved in the project to ensure that it is completed in a timely fashion and meets all of the requirements that we all agreed at the outset the project would do. Next slide, please. So this visual went out a couple months ago via an NCAP newsletter. You may have seen it. This is a simplification, not simplification. It is a visual representation of our simplified plan, right? What does this mean for you? I have a building. I want to do this. We want to cut our power. Now what? What do I have to do? This is the roadmap. You fill out our intake form. We then will take that address, put it into a mapping system. We will check and see what the rules are in your community. We will do the heavy lift on the research, and then we will come to you with non-engineering solar schematic drawings to show you what it would look like. From there, we will have a meeting. We will ask you then for more information. That more information is mission critical. It is a copy of at least one of your electricity bills. Why? Because we have to make sure that the size of the installation on your roof meets the needs of your power bill, right? We want to make sure that we can match your energy usage to your energy production numbers. So once we hammer that down, we agree to what you want, you decide, oh, I also want a battery. We'll go back, we'll run those numbers. Maybe it's too expensive, maybe it's not too expensive. This is all part of this discussion. You are a critical point where your input is highly valuable and necessary. Once we agree on that framework, we would ask you all to formally enter the program by signing a letter of intent between our organizations. And that will then allow CAP Solar to go out on your behalf in the local market and talk to engineers and start doing site visits, confirm our pricing, and shore up the project such that then we enter into a formal agreement, sign the formal agreement, we take over, construction happens. Somebody in your facilities management team lets us in the morning to let the engineers and the electricians in, and you all wait for us to finish and turn your lights on. I was asked a very good question. How long, like how much time does this take for my staff? Right? We all have sensitivities around all of the work we're being asked to do. There's always more work than there is time in the day. And our goal is that no staff, no community action agency in partnership with us would need to spend more than maximum 30 hours over the course of a year, right? If a project took a year to complete. It really is not meant to be a tax on you, a time tax on you. We want to warehouse all of that work so that you all can continue to do what you do for your communities. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. We included this so that you have an idea of what your drawings will look like, right? What does the solar drawing look like? This is what you'll be seeing, something very similar to this. This won't be your drawing because it's not your building, but I think it's important to show what appears to me when I first looked at this, first time I looked at something like this, I said, well, how come there isn't solar on the whole roof? Why is it only on one side? Well, that's because that's where the sun is really shining. And that second image where you can see the yellow and the dark orange colors. The darker orange is showing you what side of the roof is in shade versus the bright yellow side, which is in sun. So you really only want to put solar panels where you're getting the maximum amount of sun. You don't really want to spend a ton of money putting them in the shade because it's not going to net out too much for you on the end. And I share that because we're not interested in oversizing this project to increase our fees and to increase money being made for us. That's not what we're in this for, right? We're in this really to ensure you're getting the best possible product and system for your community. Next slide, please. So what's the next step for you guys? Two things. You can either register. Kendra's going to put the link into the chat if she hasn't already. You can register here. Or if you need some more information, email us, right? info@capsolar.org. We will respond to you as quickly as we possibly can. We have been in discussions with other organizations, other CAPs that are pretty far down the path with a local solar developer. They wanted to get on this. They jumped ahead. They found a local person to do this, and that's fantastic. And so we've reviewed contracts for organizations. And we've looked at the terms, and we've been able to say to some CAPs, like, this is a great deal, please do it. Jump, keep going. You shouldn't walk away from this opportunity. And we've had others who've come to us, and we've seen drawings where, solar panels were put over skylights. Solar panels were put on top of air conditioning units on the roof, right? That's not real. You can't do that. That's a salesperson trying to make a bigger commission because they sold you more panels. So we were able to tell that local CAP, please don't go with this company, right? Call this guy back, don't call that guy back, or let us help you. We'll help, we really are here to be an asset and a partner for the network. Doesn't necessarily have to be us. If you're already on your path with somebody else, we're happy to help. I saw a question saying if we've already registered your building. We have had about 200 buildings register. We are, I think, fully mapped out on all of them, and in the process of writing back to every organization that put in their building with drawings. So if you haven't heard from us already, please email us. Please send the email to info@capsolar.com. Please highlight which building it is, and we'll then send it to you. I know that I'd sent out a couple of emails that got sent to people's spam. The links, right, the link that was embedded to the document triggered a spam filter. It got sent to spam, and it wasn't until I followed up with a regular email that people saw it. So please check your spam filter. But if it's not there, please reach out. Happy to do it. So that's it. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to open up the chat now and see if there are any questions I missed.
Laura, I have a question.
Yes, please.
I think when we talked, I brought up that, like, the upfront cost. Someone asked about, what types of buildings are eligible. Buildings in my community come in a wide variety of age, materials, all of that stuff. So could you maybe speak to any upfront cost?
Sure. I think it's a two-part question. The first part is what kind of building? Really any kind of building. If you've got a big, low building that's one story and you've got a flat roof, yeah, that works. If you've got a multi-story apartment building, sure, let's take a look at that. If you've got, we've modeled out some buildings that are like not little, but like a series of townhouses that are all connected. We'll look at those, right? Age of roof is going to matter, right? If you have a new roof, that's going to be a faster project to execute than a roof that's 25 years old. But if you've got a roof that's 25 years old, now's the time to be thinking about it, right? You got to replace that roof anyway. Why not explore what roofing materials might actually make the most sense? There are solar shingles on the market right now that look like roofing tiles. that look like asphalt roof shingles, and actually get held down by other asphalt shingles. So it's not an elevated panel. That works really well in some places. It may not work well on a particular roof based on its, situation. Is it facing south? Is it facing east? All of those are the things that we think about when we look at these roofs. So if it's something you're interested in exploring, we're agnostic on the type of building. Send it to us. We'll look at it. There's no reason not to look at it, right? There's no harm in looking at a building and determining if it is solar viable or not. As for upfront costs, there shouldn't be any upfront costs to you at this point. We are going to warehouse those costs for any preliminary drawings that need to take place now. And, once you sign a letter of intent and we get further down, those upfront costs are going to be borne by Cap Solar and with the eCAP partnership in mind. And we can go further into sort of the financial, pro formas when we've looked at the building, confirmed what you want, priced it out, then you look at the real hard numbers. It's very hard to do it sort of in theoreticals because it's very dependent, as Kendra said, on each market and the price of power in each market, right? I will not lie. In some places in America where power is only 3 cents, very hard to lower your power lower than 3 cents, right? So for those places, it may not make sense to just do solar. It may make sense to do it with a battery because the battery is the value add there for emergency resiliency plays. Sort of a long-winded answer, but it's not cut and dry.
It's very, very helpful. Another question from Peter, and then I would add on to this is, would CAP office buildings be eligible? And then I'm going to say, in places like schools where we have children and we have classrooms, is there a disruption to the day-to-day while a project is happening? And then would there be any consideration for, while under construction, the ability to have maybe children in buildings receiving services? I think that would be kind of an add-on.
So the first part of that question was, I'm sorry, I lost it because I got lost with the children. I was like, wait a second, can we do
Office buildings.
office buildings? Absolutely. Yes. Office buildings, no problem. Buildings that you're providing services, whether they're health services, whether they're immigration services, whether they're childcare services. Yes, there shouldn't really be any disruption to those services in those buildings, right? No more than any roofing work would, right? My neighbors just got a new roof put on their house and they were home all day and the roof was done. It's not a lengthy process. The installation of solar panels, again, depending on the type of solar panels, doesn't take that long. Some of the things that may be disruptive are if you need to upgrade the electrical in the building, right? If you know you want to add a battery, you're probably going to have to add some electrical work. That might mean ripping open a couple walls, fixing those walls, and that may mean some disruption. But in a school environment, in a childcare facility, I don't know that would then go into the classrooms, right? You'd be running those wires down through the walls to the basement or wherever your electrical interconnection points are. So it really shouldn't be disruptive. But to your point, it is an important factor to consider when we're talking through the design and we're talking about the specifics of your building.
Another question, do you have kind of a bit of an understanding breakdown of those 200 that you guys received? Like the makeup, are they primarily office buildings? Are they schools? Or is it like a mixed bag?
It is a completely mixed bag. I mean, and I mean this in the most loving way. It is as diverse a group of buildings as the 50 states could put together. Really, it's been fascinating, right? I've seen teeny tiny little buildings, right? Just like little Cape Cod cottage style office buildings that have a small administrative staff sitting in them. They've got like 8 acres behind them. And they say, oh, we own this acreage. Maybe we should put something there. And I'm going, yeah, that would be great if we can. And I've seen huge, huge, massive warehouses, right? Some organizations run very large food pantries, right? And so you could put this on this massive food pantry warehouse. One of the issues is not so much, it's not really an issue, but it's a flag. A lot of people registered buildings where they are tenants. And so if you're a tenant in the building, you don't own the building. It's not impossible to do this, but it requires the owner of the building coming into this conversation. The owner of the building is then the entity that we would need to be doing all this work with, and might not be the fastest process, but should certainly be considered if you have a working relationship with your building owner, right? There are some organizations that are tenants in buildings that are owned by other nonprofits. That's perfect. Love to work with them. But yeah, I've seen everything from old, buildings that were once churches that are now not churches. We've seen those apartments. I mean, we've seen everything so far.
Yeah, when I first talked to you all, the first thing that came to mind was we restored a building and converted into, it was a total gut rehab. I mean, it was a restoration, but a shelter for our homeless residents. And so it to me, that was just like, wow, that would just be really amazing that that these resources could be utilized in that way. Any other questions, you all? Kendra, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, nothing for me if nobody has any questions.
So don't leave yet because we have a couple more things. So go ahead, Kendra, go ahead and move on. I guess I'll take this one. So if we've piqued your interest, and I hope that we have, again, in this space, it's new for many of us. And we just have to get started, submit the registration and let's see what we can do. Really, really excited to see everyone here today. And if you liked what you saw, you want to learn more, come back in the spring. And these will be some of the topics that we will be covering, potentially adding more. Next slide. Also, if we didn't give you enough here, I would highly encourage everyone to come in person to New Orleans the last week of January. We have a very nice and packed agenda. For those of you who are yearning, to be around your colleagues and kind of huddle and rally around the promise, this would be a good time to do it. So just really encourage you. My first management and leadership training conference, I think, was probably 10 years ago, and it was pretty game changing for me. So it's a different type of event than the annual conference, much deeper, and content is just, to me, much more robust. So if you can swing it, or you can send one of or more of your staff, this is a place for those emerging leaders and those who you're looking at for leadership positions. Go ahead on the next one. This is I think next slide is probably a yes. This is important. This is our pitch slide for please. We are taking we are serving the network on weatherization leverage funding. I'm learning how important this report is that we co-issue with NASCAS. Our funder partners, shout out to them, especially at DOE, who really utilize this to tell our story and why we are so impactful that we can layer $294 million as a network last year against the investments that the country and the government are making in the weatherization program. So either fill it out or send to as many people as you know in the weatherization space. Next slide. Another plug. So we, in order to continue to do this work, we want people to know what we're doing in the form of numbers and data and impact. But nothing sometimes tells a better story than the stories of the human beings either behind the work or receiving the benefit. And so please consider either doing it yourself or voluntolding one of your friends at your organizations to highlight one of your weatherization champions there in your community. Next slide. All right, so guess where you guys are coming? You're coming to my hometown in August, and I'm planning to really show everyone a really good time. So please mark your calendars. If you have not been to Detroit ever, or if you haven't been here in a while, it is a transformed city with a lot to offer. And hopefully, we're going to be doing some, not hopefully, I do know that the plan is to get people out into the city and do some exploring and do some kind of mobile type experiential get out into the city. And I'm really just excited to show it off and welcome you to this great city, and who may be Super Bowl champions this year, who knows. Next slide. And then I think finally, the final message here is that, like, we're here for you guys. As you've heard, we are super complex. We are very diverse. We each have different challenges and opportunities in our community, and our job is to help you be as successful as you can, provide you with all of the success, all of the supports that you will need to be successful in completing your mission. We cannot tell you how grateful we are for the good work that you're doing. I can say from the bottom of my heart, out in the community, doing this work, it is not easy. And it can be very, very trying at times, but just keep up the good work, and please let us know if there's anything that we can do for you. Just reach out, and hopefully we will see everyone in New Orleans. I hope everyone has a really good day. Was there any other questions before we head out? Yeah, I agree. So important. Very, very grateful for all of you. Hope you have a good rest of the day. And if anything comes to mind, just use those emails. We will definitely get back to you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Kendra.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye-bye.